My name is George Crabtree. By day, I help to solve crimes with my companions of the Toronto Police. By night, my inspiration pulls me into extraordinary places, weaving tales of mystery and heart-pounding adventure. Please join me and step inside my imagination as my first novel unfolds. Oh, for the love of... At the end of the 19th century, citizens of the realm are deep in the thrall of Egypt's exotic mysteries and priceless treasures. But there are those who would collect said treasures by dishonest means, and some say they risk awakening ancient curses and malevolent spirits. You know, Will, of late I believed our fair city might see some reprieve from murder.
Fate cares little about our beliefs, George. We have 7 murders to solve. Do you recognize him, George?
Alderman Aiken.
Yes. And these others were all found dead in the exact same place.
And no sign of foul play,
None, but 7 prominent citizens dying of natural causes all on the same night. It's too far beyond credulity.
The poisoner, perhaps?
That's what we need to find out. Where in the blazes is Julia?
Pardon my tardiness. I was on my way from the Governor General's ball when a rather unsavory gentleman tried to relieve me of my belongings, including my carriage. Imagine the cheek. I may need some minor repairs on the carriage door, I'm afraid. But as for my would-be robber, he's soon to awaken as a guest of the constabulary.
Well done.
But enough about me. What brings us all these fresh unfortunates?
While Julia investigated the cause of death, Will and I sought a link between the victims. We learned that the victims were all Egyptologists, collectors of artifacts from the time of the pharaohs. But we were still in the dark as to what caused their untimely deaths. Eventually, all clues led to a secret parlor where the aldermen sometimes entertained.
George, wait. The last people to open this coffin are now all dead. We should take some precautions.
I highly recommend you do.
Julia!
The victims all inhaled fungal spores. Not immediately fatal, but within several hours their livers shut down.
If Alderman Aiken and his fellow Egyptologists had been illegally smuggling Egyptian artifacts, then an actual mummy would be far too good to resist.
They weren't to know that by opening the coffin, they would turn into corpses as well.
Yes, but the question is, were the spores naturally occurring, or were they placed here?
It's ghastly, like some sort of curse.
Blast! The spores appear to be part of some vile design.
Who would do such a thing?
And furthermore, what's become of the coffin's former tenant?
Indeed. What had become of it? Had a 3,000-year-old corpse risen from the dead to walk the streets of Toronto? And if so, would we be the next to suffer its deadly wrath? The murders of Egyptian collectors continued, and it seemed certain there was some connection to the missing mummy. We had discovered a hieroglyphic journal next to one victim. After many hours poring over tomes of Egyptian lore, we'd almost managed to translate the pictographical code into the Queen's English.
Right, gentlemen! Who's this lion-headed fellow in all these photographs, then?
He's right, Will. It's the same figure. What is it?
Not what, George, but who. The figure is Sekhmet, a particularly violent deity said to have destroyed enemies of the pharaohs with arrows of fire.
Right then, we've almost got it.
Carry on, then. And let's make sure we apprehend this musty murderer before Queen Victoria's secret visit to our fair city, shall we? God save the Queen!
God save the Queen.
At Station 4, Thomas was a fine leader and a loyal friend. But late at night, he indulged in a passion for the art of pugilism, and was said to be the most fearsome of foes.
George.
My goodness, Will, this is it. The pictograms and phonograms are integrated in such a way as to create 2 separate messages. The first is simply a history of the Pharaoh's 13th dynasty.
And the second, a message.
Divine retribution is upon you. The Eye of Ra has returned. Sekhmet is coming.
Perhaps even sooner than expected.
Will and I had faced formidable foes in the past, but it seemed quite certain, in the darkness of Station 4 that night, we were to meet a most unhappy end. If not for the return of the Inspector and his skilled fists, Will and I would most certainly have been killed. But we were denied the opportunity of interrogating our would-be assassin, for the moment the Inspector got the upper hand, the mummy quite suddenly expired. Ah, Thomas, your secretive bare-knuckle boxing bouts have proven most useful once again.
Yes, I just knocked out the Cabbage Town Colossus when I had a strange premonition that you two gentlemen needed my assistance. So, is this our Egyptian murderer then? And is this blasted case finally at an end?
It's as we thought, George. Nothing supernatural here. What's this? This is no ordinary amulet. There's a needle sticking out of the back. He was poisoned, no doubt, and it was activated remotely by wireless telegraphy from somewhere nearby.
Which would indicate, I'm afraid, that this rather unpleasant character is not our Sekhmet.
Indeed, George. I'd wager that the fiend is still very much alive, and that these murders are just the beginning.
During her post-mortem, Julia discovered a clue in scar tissue covering the assassin's back. Will surmised a connection to an ancient cult in Egypt that practiced ritualistic self-flagellation in tribute to their heathen gods. What kind of mummy wears boots, and filthy ones at that?
Julia, magnifying glass. This is a mixture of sand, mud, clay, and shells. This unique mixture can only be found in one place on Earth. Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls. That's a 2-day journey. We can't just up and leave.
We could be there this afternoon.
This afternoon, Jules.
Have none of you met Clarissa?
Julia's wealth afforded us access to the swiftest means of transportation available. Evil was striking at our city, and we had to strike back before something catastrophic occurred. We were forced to depart aboard the Clarissa in inclement weather, but these dangers soon paled as we neared the mouth of the Niagara River, and we realized we were shadowed by a dark and menacing vessel. I saw no good intentions in its black and billowing sails. We fled Sekhmet's henchmen in Clarissa's lifeboat, abandoning the ship to the enemy. But our quiet escape soon became a nightmarish pursuit, with cannonballs seeking us out in that cold, dark water, until one finally hit home.
The mysterious stranger awakes.
Miss, where am I?
We had a fire at the hospital and are housing patients in the nurse's residence. This is my room. How are you feeling? Do you remember what happened to you?
Yes, all too well. I don't know what's become of my companions.
There were no others found on the shore, I'm afraid. I'm truly sorry. Now, no more talking. It is my duty to ensure your recovery. My name is Sanura.
As I slept, my worried imagination took me to some terrible places. My only solace was that no one could be more resourceful or courageous than my friends, and these qualities had seen them out of innumerable scrapes in the past.
He started to his feet and grasped his cudgel, but the next moment, he fell back into his seat, trembling violently.
Miss Sanura, I don't mean to interrupt you. You'll not find a more devoted listener to a detective yarn than myself. And you do have a most enchanting accent, if I may say so.
My father was a Frenchman. And before you attempt to disarm me with further compliments, I must inform you that you're not going anywhere.
I'm eager to know my friends' whereabouts, and if I cannot find them, I'm duty-bound to complete our mission. on my own.
George! Thank God you're alive. And apparently in the peak of good health. Lace up your bootstrings, my good man. It appears our friends have fallen into the hands of the enemy.
Thank you. Torn as I was to leave the company of the enchanting Senora, Will and I set forth immediately. Sekhmet had found our companions, and from what we had learned, he was not prone to mercy.
My name is Senora. It is my duty to ensure your recovery.
George! Thank God you're alive. And apparently in the peak of good health.
We traversed the distance to the local police station, and although all the street lamps were burning, I could not help but feel there were shadows gathering all around us.
For several weeks, I've investigated this evil. Like a mother who instinctively knows when her child is in danger. I have known in my heart that there's a malevolence afoot in my jurisdiction.
Any idea as to its source?
I believe it skulks somewhere underground, waiting to strike. And from what you've told me of the heinous murders in Toronto, it seems that time is nigh. I would look near the falls themselves, but I must warn you. Don't worry, gentlemen, it's just the electricity. Very primitive, I'm afraid.
Blast, he's dead. George, look. What could have done such a thing? Perhaps it was better that we did not know the heinous nature of the creatures awaiting us in the dark, for there do exist some things more frightening than the unknown. We'd best make our departure.
Unarmed? I doubt we'll make it. George, see if the inspector kept a little calmative whiskey in his drawers. Let's have it.
What are you doing?
Getting us out of here.
Will's jury-rigged flame launcher proved just what we needed to escape the station. But before anything else, I insisted we look to the safety of Senora. Had they sent these infernal mechanical scarabs after her as well? Having only just met this rare beauty, I could not abandon her to such a terrible fate. After rescuing Senora, we hastened toward Niagara Falls. Exhilarated as I was to see this miracle of nature, my injuries caused me much discomfort. Fortunately, Senora knew the area well and offered to accompany us as both our guide and my nurse. Near the precipice of the falls, hidden behind the rushing water, we discovered a ladder leading to Sekhmet's secret lair. However, we found our path blocked by a gargantuan henchman. However would we outmaneuver him?
Oh.
Oh, there we have it. Locked. That would have been too easy, I suppose. I'll search him for a key.
No, George. There's no keyhole. Perhaps we're looking for something else. The skull, George. It's hollow. I believe we're looking for the wrong kind of key.
The amulet. Perhaps we're to drop it inside.
Like in Poe's story, the gold bug.
Yes, exactly. Sonora, you do have impeccable taste in literature.
Just put it in, George.
Oh, right. Drop it in where?
Sekhmet is known as the Eye of Ra.
Which eye?
In Egyptian lore, the left eye can represent Thoth, the moon god, and the right eye can represent...
The sun god, Ra. His right?
Yes, George, his right eye. His other right.
We did it well. What came from that room was an onslaught of barbarism so fierce and without mercy that I could not hide my fear from Senora. Fortunately, there was no time for fear. How curious. that for all the scores of villains Will and I had apprehended, neither of us had ever experienced the exceptional discomfort of incarceration firsthand. We're in a pickle now, aren't we, Will? In the enemy's clutches, unable to stop whatever evil that's about to be unleashed on the world. We've lost our friends, who may have already perished, and the kind-hearted nurse in our care has been taken captive because we were unable to protect her. Doesn't that sound...
Quiet, George.
What is it?
I hear voices coming from the vent.
Touch me again, you bloody miscreant, and you'll be sweeping up your teeth with a dustpan.
Thomas!
Sonora.
Please, don't be upset with me, Georges. We all have a job to do. Sekhmet entrusted me to bring you two here, where you'd be out of the way.
Out of the way for what?
For what's to come. Nothing less than the return of the Pharaohs. As I told you, my father was a Frenchman, but my mother, she was a direct descendant of the Pharaohs. A secret sect of royal blood. Their sworn mission, to recover the precious artifacts from our time of supremacy. Artifacts spirited away to England and her servile colonies. After my mother was killed by English soldiers, it became my duty to take her place.
I understand your desire to reclaim what's rightfully yours, but to resort to murder?
Sekhmet does not believe in half measures. Your empire must be destroyed.
Sonora, what are you saying?
I'm saying that before sunset, your queen will be dead.
You fiend!
I have to confess I did wonder it'd be like to kiss you. Instead, I must have you buried alive.
To think that our beloved monarch might suffer at the hands of our adversary was simply unacceptable to a gentleman of the Empire. Our enemies were headed her way. And were we able to stop them? No. We were to face a most ghastly death. Queen Victoria was arriving in Toronto that morning for a secret conference with financial advisors on threats to the Empire. Little did she know, there was much more at stake. We were privy to her visit only as trusted officers of the law. We did not know her specific destination, but I feared our enemy did. Thomas! Julia! It's no use. Either they can't hear us or they're no longer.
I'll need yours as well, George.
You'll destroy it, won't you, Will?
Yes.
It was a gift from my Aunt Petunia.
You'll have to decide, George, between death and a broken watch.
Fair trade. Will explained the workings of the device to me, as he often did, but after a few moments of hearing about spring barrels, crown wheels, and pallet staffs, my head began to hurt and I begged him to stop. All I needed to know was, would it work? Ah, well done, Will. It did work.
George, I think we're in for a spot of trouble.
The lights!
Fancy yourselves as pugilists, do you?
Thomas!
He's all yours, Julia.
Take that!
Big chaps always have soft bellies. One to the midsection, and they're all yours.
He's quite impressive, isn't he?
Bad news, gentlemen. We heard talk in our cell down the way that Sekhmet has built himself something called a biocannon.
Biocannon. If the spores we found in that coffin were to be used on a larger scale, a propulsive device could kill hundreds.
Good heavens. A biological attack on the Queen. How utterly vulgar.
We have to find her before Sekhmet does.
God save the Queen.
We reclaimed Julia's stolen yacht and sped homeward at full sail. Over the wireless telegraph, we learned the Queen's meeting was taking place at a prominent local bank. As we neared Toronto, I prayed we'd arrive in time. If only we'd known we had a stowaway below deck. We should have known that once and again Sekhmet would be one step ahead of us. How could this villain know our every move? I began to wonder if we acted of any free will whatsoever, or if our every effort was predetermined, part of some evil design. Then blackness came, and all thoughts were banished.
Hello, Detective Crabtree.
Who are you?
The Wrath, the Pharaohs, the Eye of Ra. I am Sekhmet. Oh. You feel my sting in your veins. We must have you blind. You see, when the Queen and her advisors are killed, the authorities will need someone to blame.
My friends won't let you get away with this.
Your friends are mincemeat for the fish and gauze. We won't meet again, but I do hope you find yourself welcomed into the gates of your heaven. You'll certainly not be welcome here on Earth after you're found dead by your own hand with the evidence of your treachery all around you.
My friends, gone. The Queen, dead. Canada and the rest of the Empire left headless and prone to further catastrophe. All was truly lost.
Georges? Georges, can you hear me?
Senora, have you come to gloat?
No, Georges. To say that I'm sorry.
Sorry for what? That you betrayed me and killed my friends? Or sorry that you're about to destroy everything left in the world that I hold dear?
I'm not a killer, but I'm loyal to our cause. I only wish you didn't have
to die. I don't. Senora, untie me.
Senora, I should have known your weak heart was not suited to the task.
No.
But do you want to perish with this English filth?
Please.
Sekhmet! You're no god. You're just a low-life criminal like I thought you were.
Father?
Her father? However great my shock, I could tell that Senora had been shaken to her soul, for she believed her father long dead. Who knows how long hatred and lunacy had festered inside this man? Long enough to formulate an evil plot I could not foil alone? It seemed more likely than not. While we had busied ourselves solving the small crimes of our fair city, this impostor Sekhmet was creating an invention of a most foul purpose. And having unmasked him, did nothing to prevent his evil.
Father? I don't understand.
This changes nothing, Senora.
Why would you?
To avenge your mother, killed by the British soldier. To cripple the Empire and leave it vulnerable to overthrow in the ensuing chaos. To entertain myself. What does it matter? I've taken this form as my own.
All this time, I thought you were dead too.
Bernard Lenoir is gone. Your father has become something far greater. An instrument of vengeance.
And with that, he pounced at me, like some vicious animal. But suddenly, Senora leapt between us, and saved my life at the expense of her own. Senora, is there any limit to your evil, man?
Georges.
Don't speak.
You must stop him. You must. The cannon can be disarmed by a numeric sequence.
Tell me.
It's...
I had no idea what the numbers meant, but Senora had given her life so I might have them. Lenoir's evil plot was afoot and only I could stop him. Little did I know that help was on the way. Though my heart bled for Senora, I had no time for grief. I raced for the bank with such speed that my heart screamed in my chest. Everything to which I had dedicated my humble life was in grave danger of eradication in one noxious blast.
Your Majesty, I am Detective William Murdoch. My companions are Dr.
Julia, it's been too long. Tell me, are you still fencing with the Duke of Kent?
I'm afraid not, Your Majesty. I believe he grew tired of losing.
And this is Inspector Thomas Brackenreid.
Inspector Brackenreid.
Ma'am, it is a most staggering honor to make your acquaintance.
Detective, the meeting is to begin shortly. If you don't mind, what is the purpose of your being here today?
Your Majesty, you and everyone near this bank are in grave danger. There is a plot afoot to assassinate you. We are here to prevent it. With our lives, if need be.
Please continue.
Sadly, the fourth member of our team is... George, we thought we'd lost you.
Will, no time for words. They're here. Our plan was this. Julia would lead Her Majesty to the relative safety of the bank's steel vault. The inspector would use his fists to keep any assailants at bay. Will and I would locate and disarm the biocannon, and deal with the inevitable arrival of Bernard Lenoir.
Your Majesty, if you would be so kind as to come with me.
We're not sure that we'd like to be locked in there, Julia.
Believe me, Mum, it's better than the alternative.
You touch one hair of Her Majesty's head, and I'll pound you into a Yorkshire pudding.
Bonne chance.
Right then, you glass-jawed milksops. Which one wants to drop first?
George, it's here. We have 90 seconds to disarm it.
How much time to unlock the weapon?
I don't know. First, you have to find the lock.
Oh, good God, man.
God? God can't help you, I'm afraid. No one can.
Everything about this villain Lenoir was wrong. But with only seconds left before the biocannon detonated, I feared he might be right. 1 minute. A unit of time one can pass staring out a window or cleaning one's teeth. Or the time standing in between you and the end of the world as you know it. As Julia attempted to usher the Queen into the safety of the vault, Thomas fended off Sekhmet's goons. Meanwhile, Will attempted to stave off the madman himself long enough for me to defuse his diabolical contraption.
Thomas, can we get a little help here?
I'm a little busy at the moment.
Any luck, George?
Not yet!
We're all night together. We three and your precious coin.
I found it! I'm entering the combination!
Disconnect the explosives from the distribution valves!
I don't know the difference!
The blue wire, George! The blue wire!
There are several blue wires!
Guess, George!
Guess!
Hurry! Just do it!
In that moment, I knew we had come too far, risked too much to fail. I thought of everything my dear friend Will had taught me over the years, and I asked myself, with each piece of the infernal machine I dislodged, what would Will do? I knew in my heart that would see us through. Soldiers, policemen, all rushed to the scene after reports flooded in about some kind of attack on the city. But they came too late. We didn't need them anymore. What happened?
The charges on the biocannon must have detonated. It knocked us off our feet.
Quiet, William.
But if the device detonated...
It's all right, George. You did it. The poisonous canisters were disconnected in the nick of time. All we got was a blast of hot air.
So what happened to Lenoir then?
I suspect we haven't seen the last of him.
After freeing Julia and the Queen from the safety of the bank's vault, we were summoned to an audience before Her Majesty.
We have survived several assassination attempts in the past, but none with so fiendish and meticulous a plot. We would be grateful if you would accept the position of private security force at Buckingham Palace.
There's trouble in the town of York.
Your Majesty, we are deeply honored by your offer. But we have taken a lifelong vow to protect our beloved city, and it seems that once again, dread is upon us.
Till we meet again.
Something foul afoot. A scientist has lost control of his experiment. A mechanized arachnid of gargantuan proportions.
What the blazes does that mean?
It means there's a giant metal spider on the loose in Toronto.
Though all I could think of was a bath and a hot meal, we had vowed to take on all threats to our beloved city, no matter how utterly terrifying they might be.